Did you know that between 16 and 18% of people have very severe anxiety when it comes to taking tests? And another 18% of people have a moderately high level of anxiety when it comes to taking tests. I don't know where you fall on that spectrum, but that means that more than a third of us have some level of anxiety when it comes to taking tests. I know that in school I did. That sense of, oh my gosh, if I don't know the right answers to the right questions? What if I studied the wrong things? And I have a funny story that I'll tell you in the end. But over time, I just kind of did it. I dealt with it. But I had pretty high test anxiety over my time. And for many of us, the last time we had to take tests like that was in college, or maybe if you're getting credentialed in something, or you are, becoming an experienced whatever. Right now, my son is about ready to take his test to become a journeyman electrician. I anticipate he's going to have some anxiety with that. I'm having anxiety over that, and I'm not even taking the test. But for the most of us, tests, that part of our lives are done. Now, I did have in my career when I was in pharmaceutical sales, however, it was a very, very stressful time for test taking because the first company that I worked for, you had to take a series, your training was like 12 weeks long. It was crazy. And during that time, you were constantly taking tests, and there was no way to, like, go back and check your answer or get a do-over. You took a test and you did it and passed or not. And if you didn't pass enough of them, you would not, continue to have that job. So that was really high stress. But for the most of us, you know, we don't have to deal with that on a regular basis. But there's still this sense of test. You're like, am I being tested on this? Am I being graded on this? Whenever somebody's looking at you for doing something new, there's kind of that question like, what's going to happen with this? Now, why am I talking about this week and why is this motivating me? Well, I realized that I have an entire team of people who I keep talking about the fact that I'm testing them all right now. And I realized that maybe I was using the wrong word because as I was saying, hey, we're going to get tested during this process. We're rolling out, a bunch of new programs. We have a lot of new things going on. People have been promoted, their jobs are changing and growing. So there's a lot of stress. And I realized when one of my people came back to me with something and said, I just don't want to let you down. I don't want to fail you. And when I heard the word fail, oh man, that slowed me down because I went, whoa, this is not a pass or a fail. This is a testing of your endurance or your ability to know about something new or grow in your role. But it got me thinking. So I decided to look up a little bit about the definition of test. So really, there are two kind of major forms of the word test. And one is kind of that pass fail thing. Take measure to check the quality, performance, or reliability of something, especially before putting it into widespread use or practice. So that's the test. Do you know the material? Yes or no? And if so, at what level, if you're going to give it a grade rather than a pass fail. But the other one is a procedure. A procedure intended to establish the quality, performance, or reliability of something, especially before it's taken into widespread use. So that's the testing to understand. Now, there's actually another form of testing that has to do with metallurgy, and that's whether or not you test for the purity of what metal you are looking for. And so there's different kinds of tests. But what I really wanted my team to understand was this is about the test of a little bit of a procedure or a process or a growth in your job and your role and your expectation. And so in that testing, I am testing you more about how well you can adapt. And it's not a pass fail test. You don't just pass it or fail it or pass it and or make me happy or fail me. It's about that level of endurance. And I think that that's where I started thinking about how all of us, when we're faced with new challenges, especially in the workplace, if we don't know for sure whether or not that pass or fail is part of the equation, we start creating in our own minds scenarios. And so then we add the pressure, and the pressure does a couple things. So let's talk about this. Think about this. If you are one of those people who've ever had the, test anxiety, when you get yourself all agitated and you get nervous, you start to tense up. You tense up physically. You might not sleep very well. You might be sick to your stomach. You might not know, you might not be as clear as you want to be. And that's one of the kind of horrible side effects to getting tense. When you need to use your mind and you tense up, your brain actually it takes care of itself. It just protects it. So it's not going to help you. It's not going to give you the yoga dog relax and breathing that allows your brain to really function. It constricts. So that tension constricts you mentally. So if you're taking a pass fail test and you have anxiety, you are less likely to have good outcomes because you're not going to be able to think as clearly. Well, let's talk about a different kind of test. Let's talk about physical fitness tests. So let's say you're going to run, you're going to do a physical endurance test, and you're really nervous about it and you tense up, your muscles tense. So now your body can't perform physically the way it should if you were as if you were relaxed. And when we think about this tension, so that's one way, just thinking about our minds or thinking about our bodies, but think about our emotions. When we get tense, our emotions are also impacted by that tension. And that tension causes a couple of different things that are just what we talked about there. Can cause your mind not to be as clear and open, might not allow you to see all the possibilities that are in front of you. It might keep you from making good decisions. It also might make you more tired, make you more grumpy, more irritable, more sad. And the tension is what we're trying to avoid. So, as we are being tested in various ways, especially in the workplace, it's important that you recognize that how you react to that test will affect your outcomes. So, I came up with a couple little pointers, and I think it's really important. Is number one is to know the difference between a test, like a check, a pass fail, and a test, which is a procedure to establish where you are. So if I have you in a brand new role and I know that you don't know everything that's going to come at you, then if you're not sure if this is a pass fail, if I'm going to, keep my job or not, then ask me or ask your boss or be very clear so that you can establish, is this just to help me stretch and grow and to see how well I handle it? Or is this something that if I don't do this correctly, this could mean the end of my job? And very rarely is that the case. But very often we make that the scenario in our head. So it's the talking about it that's really, really critical. And I think you know me by now is that I really advocate the fact that as an employee, that you talk and you discuss those fears when you have them, because that's the only way you're going to get the right answer rather than creating your own scenario. So the first thing of first of three ways to really know and handle this the best way is to recognize the difference between whether or not this is a test to check where you are or a test, which is a procedure to establish. So the second thing is recognize when you tense up. So remember, I talked about that. If you're tense at a test, you're tense at a new activity, and you tense yourself up, then you are not going to think as clearly. Your body will not perform as clearly, and your emotions will not be helpful to you. And it's okay to have emotions in the workplace. It's an important factor. They're who we are. So learning to recognize when you're tense is very important. Again, Yoga Dog is always there to remind me, whether I see him when I'm doing videos or I get up to go get another cup of coffee, is that he's my reminder to just breathe in those moments of tension. Because that forces the tension to relax, and it allows your brain to start functioning again where it needs to be and not to let those fears overwhelm you. So, the third element is to recognize that when you are being stretched in your job or your roles or your responsibility, it is about growth, not perfection. Let me say that again. It's about growth, not perfection. In other words, if I ask somebody to do something that they've never ever done before, I do not expect them to be perfect at it right out of the gate, because that would be ridiculous. I want to see how they approach it, how well they handle it. When they come to me with questions, do they come to me with questions? And if they don't, why? Or, finding out later if somebody didn't understand, but they didn't want to clarify. I'm learning something about you in the process. On the flip side, somebody says, that's great. I can't wait to have this opportunity to learn, but I really don't even know where to start. Tells me that that person needs a little bit more guidance, a little bit more help. But we tend to think as human beings, and especially as people who want to do well in our jobs, that it's just all on us to come up with perfection all on our own first time out. You know what Yoga Dog says about that? He says, that's stupid. And I think it's important that we recognize this. So let me share a funny little story with you about what I think is, really about, I don't know, getting tested and testing. So, when I first had my biggest job, my first position where I was leading as many as 500 people, that was that was a huge test out of the gate. And it was both a test of my endurance and it was a test that was pass fail. I mean, that was definitely a position that if I did not deliver on expectations, I would not be in that job very long. So there's a lot of pressure to achieve a great deal very, very quickly. But I also knew that I needed to find allies to help me, not only people to ask questions of, I needed to find the right people to help me with the elements of my job that I didn't know offhand, and I needed to figure out how to keep myself balanced as I raised myself to that next level. And on the outside, to a lot of people, I look like I knew it all and I had it all perfect because, I worked really hard at making sure that I worked extra to know and understand. But I had a very great boss and mentor, and I could go to him and I could ask him questions, and I could ask them openly without any fear. And that was something that was incredibly unique and powerful. But I also found allies other than that, and I found people that were specialized in areas that I was not. I didn't go to people who had the same weaknesses I had. I went to people who are specialized in the weaknesses that I had. And when I found them, I was very clear that here are my weaknesses. I'm coming to you because you specialize in this area. And I need a team of people around me. And what that did is it not only showed many people might call that vulnerability. Like you're being vulnerable. You're showing where your faults are and where you're lacking. Absolutely. But I didn't feel that was vulnerable at all. I felt that that was the most honest way I could approach where I had some deficiencies. But I went to the people that I knew could fill those deficiencies, ones who could teach me, ones who could help me. And along the way, they recognized the strengths that I had that they didn't. And so I was able to reciprocate to them as well. So when we're faced with these tests, when we fear that we have to do them all ourselves, be perfect right out of the gate, to be able to prove something that we don't already have mastered is a way to set ourselves up for failure. And this week, I'm really motivated by the concept of not setting ourselves up for failure, understanding what our limitations are, but understanding what our strengths are and using those strengths to make the relationships, ask the questions, build the bridges, and recognize the differences between being tested, pass or fail, being tested on our endurance and our ability to grow, and understand at the base of it all, we control it by the little thing called our attitude. So that's what's motivating me this week. And remember, if you like what we're sending your way every week, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We love having you stick around and make sure to leave comments for us. We try and reply every time. Have a wonderful week.